How dare you show up at my hotel suite at 2 in the morning, Amara? Have you finally lost your mind, or do you think my private life is just another extension of the boardroom? I stood there, wrapped in a silk robe that cost more than she probably made in 6 months, staring at the woman who had been my shadow for the last 3 weeks. Amara looked like a ghost. Her eyes were bloodshot, her usually neat braids were coming undone at the edges, and her hands, those hands that had typed every report I'd demanded without a single complaint, were shaking as she held a heavy manila envelope. Welcome to the Royal Griot. We are so deeply grateful to have you here with us today. Your support means the world to our storytelling family. Before we dive into today's emotional journey, please take a moment to drop a comment below and let us know where in the world you are watching from. Whether you're in the US, Jamaica, or anywhere across the globe, we love hearing from you. I am Kolawole Balogun. In Lagos, that name is synonymous with power. They call me the Iron Lion of Eco. I built my empire from the dust of Mushin to the gleaming skyscrapers of Victoria Island. I don't believe in excuses, and I certainly don't believe in work-life balance. You either want to be part of the Balogun fortune or you want to be mediocre. There is no middle ground. For the past 3 weeks, I had pushed Amara Nwachukwu to the absolute breaking point. I knew she was a single mom. I knew she lived somewhere on the mainland and spent 4 hours every day battling the nightmare of Lagos traffic on the 3rd Mainland Bridge. But I didn't care. I needed the merger with the South African telecommunications giant to go through, and I needed someone who wouldn't blink when I demanded revisions at midnight. "The files, sir," she whispered. Her voice was thin like a thread about to snap. "You said you needed the finalized projections for the Johannesburg meeting by dawn. I couldn't send them by email. The server at the office went down, and I knew you'd fire me if they weren't in your hands." I stepped back, allowing her into the room. The scent of expensive cologne and aged whiskey in my suite clashed with the smell of the Lagos night she brought in with her. Exhaust fumes, humid salt air from the Atlantic, and a faint, lingering scent of baby powder. "You look like death, Amara," I said, my voice cold, devoid of the secret admiration I felt for her resilience. "I told you to be efficient, not to become a martyr." She walked into the center of the suite, her cheap heels clicking painfully loud on the marble floor. She didn't look at the luxury surrounding her. The gold-leafed furniture, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the twinkling lights of Lekki, or the private bar stocked with bottles that could pay for a year of her rent. She only looked at the desk. "I am not a martyr, Mr. Balogun," she said, finally finding her spark. She slammed the envelope onto the desk. "I am a mother who needs this job. But even a mother has her limits. You've kept me in that office until 11 p.m. every night for 21 days straight. Do you have any idea what that does to a child? To a home?" I poured myself a glass of water, my back to her. "The corporate world is a battlefield, Amara. If you wanted a 9-to-5 where you can bake cookies and sing lullabies, you should have applied to a primary school, not a multi-billion naira investment firm." I heard a sharp intake of breath. I turned around, expecting to see tears. I was used to tears. Women cried in my office all the time, hoping my cold-hearted reputation was just a myth. It wasn't. But Amara wasn't crying. She was laughing. It was a dry, bitter sound that chilled me more than the air conditioning. "You think this is about cookies?" she asked, stepping closer. "My son hasn't seen me awake in a week. I leave before the sun is up, and I come home when he's already dreaming of a mother who actually exists. I've worked through my lunch breaks, worked through the fever I had last Tuesday, and I've handled your insults because I thought a man who built an empire from nothing would at least respect the grind." "I respect results," I countered, leaning against the desk. "And so far your results have been adequate. That is why you still have a desk." "Adequate?" She stepped into my personal space, her eyes blazing. "I found the 200 million naira discrepancy in the Lagos port project that your CFO missed. I redrafted the entire contract for the Accra expansion in 4 languages. I have been your brain, your hands, and your shield for 3 weeks while you played the millionaire king on the cover of Forbes." She reached into her small, battered handbag and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. She didn't hand it to me, she threw it. It fluttered through the air like a dying bird before landing at my feet. "What is this?" I asked, looking down. "That," she said, her voice trembling now, "is my son's drawing from school today. The teacher called me because she was worried. The assignment was to draw your family. He drew a house, a dog, and a big empty chair where Mommy is supposed to be." A heavy silence settled over the room. I looked at the drawing. It was crude, the work of a 5-year-old, but the emptiness in that chair felt like a physical weight in the room. For a fleeting second, A memory of my own mother working 3 jobs in the heat of the Oyingbo market just to buy me my first pair of school shoes, flickered in my mind. I pushed it down. Sentiment was a luxury I couldn't afford. I will have my accountant wire a bonus to your account in the morning, Amara, I said, turning away. Go home. Get some sleep. Be back in the office by 8. No, she said. I froze. Excuse me? I said no. I'm not going home to sleep and I'm not coming back at 8. She reached for the manila envelope she had just delivered and gripped it tight. You want these projections? You want the secret to closing the South African deal? Amara, don't play games with me, I warned, my voice dropping to a dangerous register. That envelope belongs to the company. This envelope belongs to the person who did the work, she snapped. She backed toward the door, her face a mask of exhausted defiance. I spent the last 3 hours at the office not just finishing your projections but doing some digging of my own. I found something, Kolawole. Something about the betrayed partner you've been trying to ruin for the last 5 years. My heart hammered against my ribs. What are you talking about? She reached the door, her hand on the gold-plated handle. You've spent your whole life building this fortune, convinced that everyone is out to get you. You've become a monster to protect yourself. But you missed the biggest threat of all because you were too busy overworking a single mom to notice what was happening right under your nose in your own boardroom. Give me those files, Amara. Now. I started toward her, but she was already opening the door. If you want these files, and if you want to save your empire from the miracle-turned-nightmare that's coming for it, you'll come to my neighborhood tomorrow morning. Not in a limousine. Not with your bodyguards. Just you. You're fired. I roared. Do you hear me? You're finished in this city. She looked at me one last time, a strange look of pity in her eyes. I was finished the moment I started working for a man who has everything but realizes he has nothing. See you in the slums, Mr. Balogun. If you have the courage. She slammed the door, leaving me alone in the suffocating silence of my luxury suite. I looked at the drawing of the empty chair on the floor. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a notification from my security lead. Sir, we have a problem. There's been a massive data breach at the head office. Someone just emptied the offshore acquisition accounts. My blood turned to ice. Amara wasn't just an overworked employee. She was the only one who knew how to stop the collapse. The sun hadn't even finished rising over the Atlantic when my world began to incinerate. By 6 a.m. my empire was a house of cards in a hurricane. I stood in my glass-walled boardroom on the 20th floor of the Balogun Towers, overlooking the sprawl of Lagos. Usually this view made me feel like a god. Today it felt like a gallows. What do you mean the encryption keys were changed from the inside? I roared, slamming my fist onto the mahogany table. My head of IT, a man I'd paid a small fortune to keep my data impenetrable, was shaking so hard his glasses were sliding off the bridge of his nose. Sir, it wasn't a hack. Someone used the master administrator credentials. Those credentials only belong to you, the CFO, and your executive assistant. Amara. The room felt like it was spinning. My CFO, Chief Adelik, a man I had known for 20 years, a man I had considered a brother, wasn't in the room. His chair was empty. His phone was off. My security team had just reported that his private jet had cleared Nigerian airspace 30 minutes ago, headed for a non-extradition country. I had been betrayed. The Iron Lion had been blinded by his own arrogance. I had spent 3 weeks breathing down Amara's neck, making her life a living hell, while the man sitting to my right was siphoning off my life's work. Out. All of you get out. I screamed. As they scrambled out, I slumped into my chair. The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at the spot where Amara usually stood, holding her tablet, ready with my coffee and the morning's briefings. She had warned me. She had said she found a discrepancy. She had said I was too busy overworking her to see the real threat. I was a millionaire with a frozen bank account. A tycoon with a dying company. I looked at the crumpled drawing she had thrown at me the night before, the one with the empty chair. See you in the slums, Mr. Balogun. If you have the courage. I didn't take the limousine. I didn't take the Range Rover with the tinted windows and the siren escort. I took my old Mercedes G-Wagon, the one I drove myself when I wanted to remember what it felt like to be in control. Driving from Victoria Island to the heart of the mainland felt like traveling through different centuries. I crossed the third mainland bridge, the gray lagoon stretching out on either side, dotted with the wooden canoes of local fishermen. The traffic was a chaotic symphony of yellow Danfo buses, motorcycles weaving through gaps, and street hawkers selling everything from plantain chips to phone chargers. I followed the GPS coordinates I had extracted from Amara's personnel file, a file I hadn't looked at in 3 years. She lived in a neighborhood called Ebute Metta. As I pulled off the main road, the asphalt turned to red dust and broken concrete. The gleaming skyscrapers were replaced by crowded 2-story buildings with rusted zinc roofs. The air was thick with the smell of diesel generators, frying Amara, and the salty humidity of the nearby coast. Children in faded school uniforms ran alongside my expensive car, their eyes wide. "Looking for someone, Oga?" a young man with a scarred face asked, leaning against a stack of tires. He looked at my designer suit with a mixture of suspicion and amusement. "Amara Nwachukwu," I said, my voice sounding foreign in this environment. "Where is her house?" He pointed a greasy finger toward a narrow alleyway. "The yellow house with the blue gate." "But Oga, big cars like this don't usually come here unless there's trouble." "There's plenty of trouble," I muttered. I parked the car and stepped out. The heat hit me like a physical blow. I walked down the alley, my polished shoes crunching on the gravel. I found the blue gate. It was peeling, but there were pots of bright red hibiscus flowers lined up neatly in front of it. I knocked. A small boy, no more than 5 years old, opened the small wicket door. He had Amara's eyes, large, intelligent, and wary. He was wearing a t-shirt that was a little too big for him, featuring a faded superhero. "Is your mother home?" I asked, softening my voice. "Who are you?" he asked, not budging. "My mommy says I shouldn't talk to mysterious strangers, especially ones who look like they're from the television." "My name is Kola," I said, realizing for the first time in a decade how strange my own name felt without Sir or Mr. Balogun attached to it. "I work with your mom." "Toby, who is at the gate?" Amara's voice drifted from inside. She appeared a moment later, wiping her hands on a colorful kitenge apron. She wasn't wearing the sharp blazer or the modest pencil skirt I was used to. She was in a simple cotton wrapper and a t-shirt. Her hair was tied back in a simple scarf. She looked beautiful. And she looked completely unimpressed. "You actually came," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "I didn't think the Iron Lion knew how to find the mainland without a chauffeur." "Amara, please," I said, stepping forward. "The accounts. Adelik. He's gone. He took everything." "I know," she said calmly. "I saw the transfers being authorized last night. I tried to tell you 3 times yesterday, but you told me to shut up and finish the South African projections. You said my job was to follow orders, not to think." I felt the sting of her words. It was the truth, and the truth was a bitter pill. I was wrong. I was a fool. "Mara, I am being ruined. If the board finds out the extent of the theft by noon, they will liquidate the company. 10,000 people will lose their jobs. My father's name will be dragged through the mud." "And what about me, Kolawole?" she asked, her voice rising. "I lost my son's childhood for that company. I lost my health. You treated me like a machine, a mysterious stranger in your own office whom you didn't even bother to know. And now you come here because your fortune is at stake." "I'll pay you," I said desperately. "Anything. 1 billion naira. A house in Ikoyi. Just give me the files. Give me the evidence you found against Adelik." Amara stepped out into the small courtyard, her eyes flashing with a fire I had never seen in the boardroom. "You still don't get it? You think money fixes everything? Look around you, Kolawole. This is a neighborhood of people who survive on grit and grace, not bonuses and limousines. I don't want your blood money. I want my dignity back." Toby, the little boy, gripped her hand. "Mommy, is the man crying?" I wasn't crying, but I felt like I was bleeding internally. "Amara, if you don't help me, Adelik wins. The man who betrayed us both. He's the one who's been framing you for the errors in the accounts. I found the trail this morning. He was setting you up to be the scapegoat." Amara froze. "He was what?" "He's been planting digital footprints in your name for months. If the police come, they won't look for the man in the private jet. They'll look for the single mom in Ebute Metta who had the access codes." Her face went pale. The defiance vanished, replaced by a cold, sharp fear. "He's trying to take me away from my son?" "He already has the head start," I said, moving closer. "But you have the files. You told me last night you found something. If we work together, right now, we can lock him out of the secondary accounts before he reaches his destination. We can save the company and I can clear your name." Amara looked at her son, then back at me. I saw the struggle in her eyes, the desire to see me fail versus the instinct to protect her child. "I have a laptop inside," she said finally. "But the internet here is slow and the power just went out." As if on cue, the distant hum of neighborhood generators began to rise, but her house remained dark. I have a satellite uplink in my car, I said. And a mobile power station. Get your things. We don't have much time. We spent the next 3 hours huddled in the back of my G-Wagon. It was the strangest boardroom I had ever been in. The millionaire and the single mom, parked in a dusty alleyway fighting a digital war. Amara's fingers flew across the keyboard. She was brilliant, faster and more intuitive than any of my Ivy League analysts. There, she whispered, a small smile breaking across her face. I've frozen the Cayman's transfer. Adelik is sitting on a plane right now with a laptop full of useless numbers. He has nothing. You did it, I breathed, feeling a surge of relief so strong it made my head light. Amara, you saved me. I saved myself, she corrected. And I saved those 10,000 families. I looked at her, really looked at her, in the cramped space of the car. The way the sunlight caught the gold in her earrings, the strength in her jaw. I felt a tug at my heart that had nothing to do with business. I don't know how to thank you, I said softly. Don't thank me yet, she said, her expression turning somber. She pointed to the screen. Look at the IP address that just tried to bypass my freeze. It's not Adelik. Then who is it? It's coming from inside your mansion, Kolawole. Someone is in your house using your private home network. And they just initiated a total wipe command on your personal servers. My heart stopped. My mother was at that mansion. She was visiting from the village, elderly and frail. My mother is there, I whispered. Just then my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered, and a voice like cold gravel filled the car. You should have stayed in the Hotel Balogun. You and the girl. Now things are going to get messy. Then a loud crash sounded on the roof of the car. I looked up through the sunroof just as the glass shattered. Get down? I screamed, lunging across the center console to shield Amara and Toby as shards of tempered glass rained down like jagged diamonds. The heavy thud on the roof of the G-Wagon wasn't a bullet. It was a concrete block, dropped from the balcony of the neighboring Face Me I Face You apartment building. The intimidation tactics had begun. My enemies weren't just in the boardroom anymore. They had followed me into the heart of the mainland. Toby, stay under the seat. Don't move. Amara's voice was a whip, cracking with a mother's desperate authority. She didn't scream. She didn't faint. She reached for the laptop, clutching it to her chest as if it were a shield. I didn't wait for a second attack. I slammed the car into reverse, the tires screeching and spitting up red Ebute Metta dust. I swerved around a stack of wooden crates, narrowly missing a startled bread vendor, and roared back toward the main road. My heart was a frantic drum in my chest, not for my fortune, but for the two people in the car with me and the elderly woman waiting at my mansion in Lekki. Kolawole, look. Amara pointed at the rearview mirror. Two black motorcycles with tinted visors were weaving through the Lagos traffic behind us, their engines whining like angry hornets. They weren't police. They weren't traffic wardens. They were the shadows of my past mistakes coming to collect a debt. They won't stop until they have that laptop, I hissed, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Adelik didn't just want the money. He wanted to erase every trace of the Balogun empire. We can't go to your house, Amara said, her voice remarkably steady despite the chaos. If they're already inside your home network, they're waiting for you there. It's a trap, Kola. They want you caught in the gates of your own mansion. My mother is there, Amara. I can't just leave her. Your mother is a queen of the old school, Kola. If she's anything like mine, she knows how to handle trouble. But if you go there now, you're bringing the fire right to her doorstep. We need to go somewhere they won't expect. Somewhere a millionaire wouldn't be caught dead. I looked at her, this struggling single mom I had treated like a ghost for years. She was the only one with a clear head. My cold-hearted logic had failed me, but her instinct was razor-sharp. Where? I asked. The old family house in Surulere, she said. My auntie's place. It's empty because she's in the UK for a wedding. It's gated, it's quiet, and it has no digital footprint. No smart locks for them to hack, no Wi-Fi for them to track. I nodded, weaving the heavy SUV through a gap between two yellow Danfo buses. We headed towards Surulere, leaving the glitz of the islands further and further behind. An hour later, we were tucked away in a modest, sun-bleached bungalow behind a rusted but sturdy iron gate. The neighborhood was filled with the sounds of everyday life, the rhythmic thump-thump of someone pounding yam, the distant sound of high-life music from a radio, and the chatter of neighbors over the fences. It was a world of unity and resilience, a world I had forgotten existed while I was busy building my fortune in the clouds. Inside the house, the air smelled of floor wax and dried herbs. Amara immediately set Toby up in a back bedroom with a coloring book, her movements fluid and calm. When she returned to the small living room, she found me pacing, my phone clutched in my hand like a useless piece of plastic. "I can't get through to the house staff," I said, my voice cracking. "The lines are dead." "Sit down, Kolawole," she said softly. "I can't sit down. My life is disintegrating. I've been betrayed by my best friend, my accounts are frozen, and I'm hiding in a bungalow in Surulere while my mother might be in danger." Amara walked over to me. For the first time, she didn't stand at a respectful distance. She stood right in front of me and placed a hand on my arm. Her touch was warm, grounded. It felt like a miracle in the middle of a nightmare. "You are not the Iron Lion right now," she said. "You're just a man. And right now that man needs to breathe. I've already sent a coded message to a cousin of mine who works in security near Lekki. He's going to check on your mother. He'll get her out quietly if there's trouble. Trust me." I sank into an old sofa, the springs creaking under my weight. "Why are you helping me? After everything I did? I worked you until you were a shell. I ignored your life. I was a monster." Amara sat in the wooden chair opposite me. The low, afternoon sun filtered through the lace curtains, casting soft patterns on her face. "Because I know what it's like to be abandoned," she said quietly. "When Toby's father found out I was pregnant, he vanished. He told me I was a struggling girl who would drag him down. I spent nights crying in rooms smaller than your bathroom, wondering how I would buy milk, how I would keep my dignity. I know what it feels like to have the world turn its back on you." I looked at her, truly seeing her. The secret admirer in me, the part of my soul I had buried under layers of corporate greed, finally began to stir. "You're the strongest person I've ever met, Amara." "I had to be," she replied. "But Kola, you weren't always like this. I remember when I first started at the firm years ago. You used to smile at the security guards. You used to buy lunch for the whole floor when we closed a small deal. What happened?" I leaned back, closing my eyes. "The empire happened. The more I made, the more I feared losing it. I thought being cold-hearted was the only way to protect what I'd built. I thought every mysterious stranger was a threat and every friend was a competitor. I forgot that I started with nothing but a dream and a mother who believed in me." "It's never too late for a new beginning," she whispered. "But you have to decide what's worth saving. Is it the money? Or is it the man?" We sat in silence for a long time. The tension of the chase had faded into a deep, heavy introspection. I watched her through the dim light. She was soft-hearted, but made of steel. She was the second chance I didn't deserve. "I found something else in the files," she said, breaking the silence. She opened the laptop again, the glow illuminating her determined features. Adelik wasn't working alone. He was taking orders from someone else. Someone who has been a secret admirer of your downfall for a long time. "Who?" "Look at the signatures on the shell company in Accra," she said, turning the screen toward me. I leaned in, my eyes scanning the digital documents. My breath hitched. The name at the bottom wasn't a stranger's. It was a name from my childhood. A name I hadn't heard in 30 years. "Ismaila?" I whispered. "My half-brother? The one you thought was abandoned in the village when your father moved to the city?" Amara asked. "It seems he didn't stay in the village. He's been building his own fortune in the shadows, fueled by a destiny of revenge. He's the one who funded Adelik's betrayal." The betrayal cut deeper than I ever imagined. It wasn't just business, it was blood. My family's past was rising up to reclaim the present. Suddenly, the front gate of the bungalow rattled. A heavy, rhythmic banging echoed through the small house. Toby ran out of the bedroom, clutching his mother's leg. "Mommy, someone is at the door." I stood up, my pulse spiking again. I looked for a weapon, but all I found was an old brass trophy on the mantel. "Stay back," I told Amara. I walked to the window and carefully parted the curtains. A tall man in a traditional Yoruba agbada stood at the gate. He was flanked by two men who looked like they were built out of solid granite. But it wasn't the guards that caught my attention. It was the woman standing in the center. "Mama?" I gasped. My mother stood there, her face etched with forgiveness and worry, holding a small tattered suitcase. But behind her, leaning against a sleek black car that didn't belong in Surulere, was Ismaila. He looked exactly like our father, but his eyes were filled with a cold, calculating hunger. He held up a hand, waving a single piece of paper, the deed to my mansion. "The empire has a new king, Kolawole," he shouted through the gate, his voice carrying over the neighborhood noise. "And the king is feeling merciful." Open the gate and perhaps I'll let you keep your life. Amara stood beside me, her hand gripping mine. Don't do it, Kola. It's a trap. He has my mother, Amara, I said, my heart breaking. He's using the only thing I have left to destroy me. No, she said, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. He thinks he has everything, but he doesn't have the one thing that can stop him. He doesn't have the encryption key to the Boardroom accounts. He thinks Adelik has it, but I moved it this morning. I moved it to a private drive. She reached into her apron and pulled out a small silver thumb drive. He wants a confrontation? Amara asked, her eyes flashing with healing and defiance. Then let's give him one he'll never forget. But we do it on our terms. I looked from the drive to the man at the gate, then back to the woman who had saved my soul in a single night. What do you want me to do? I asked, completely surrendering my ego to her. We're going to let him in, she said, a small, dangerous smile playing on her lips. But first, we're going to make sure the whole world is watching. She turned back to the laptop and began a live stream titled, The Truth Behind the Balogun Fortune, a Story of Betrayal and Blood. Kolawole, she said, it's time to tell the truth. It's time for love wins to be more than just a phrase. Are you ready? I took a deep breath, the Iron Lion finally finding a different kind of courage, the courage to be honest. Open the gate, I said. As the iron bars groaned open, Ismaila stepped into the courtyard, a smirk of victory on his face. But as he looked at the laptop camera and saw the thousands of viewers already joining the stream, his expression shifted from triumph to terror. The real boardroom battle was about to begin, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't fighting for a millionaire title. I was fighting for my family. You always were a theatrical fool, Kolawole, Ismaila spat, his eyes darting to the laptop glowing on the small wooden table. You think a little internet show will save you from the legal reality? I have the signatures. I have the board's temporary authorization. I have the mansion keys, and I have the legacy you were too cold-hearted to share. He stepped further into the small Surulere courtyard, the dust of the neighborhood swirling around his expensive Italian leather shoes. Behind him, my mother stood trembling, her eyes fixed on me with a mixture of terror and a deep, ancient sorrow. She looked so small, this woman who had once been the pillar of my world, now a pawn in a game of billionaire chess. Let her go, Ismaila, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I felt a protective instinct surge through me that I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't about the fortune anymore. It was about the woman who had birthed me and the woman standing beside me. This is between us. Don't bring the sins of our father into her old age. Sins of our father? Ismaila laughed, a harsh, jagged sound that cut through the humid afternoon air. Our father gave you the world, Kolawole. He gave you the education, the connections, the empire. He left me in a village where the rain leaked through the roof and the only fortune I had was the stories of the half-brother who was living like a prince in Lagos. You abandoned us. You reached the top and pulled up the ladder. The live stream was buzzing. I could see the viewer count climbing, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. People were watching the Iron Lion fall in real time. The comments were a blur of shock and condemnation. I didn't know, Ismaila, I whispered, and for the first time, it wasn't a corporate lie. I was told you were taken care of. I was told the family in the village had everything they needed. You were told what you wanted to hear so you could sleep in your silk sheets. Ismaila roared. He turned to the laptop, pointing a finger at the camera. Look at him. The great Kolawole Balogun. A man who betrayed his own blood for a private jet and a seat in a boardroom. He's not a king, he's a thief of hearts. Amara stepped forward then. She didn't look like a struggling single mom anymore. She looked like a judge. And what does that make you, Ismaila? You used Adelik to rob the company. You put 10,000 livelihoods at risk just to settle a childhood grudge. You're not seeking justice, you're seeking destruction. Shut up, girl, one of Ismaila's guards barked, moving toward her. I stepped in front of her instantly, my chest heaving. Touch her and I will show you why they call me the Lion. I don't need a limousine or a bank account to break you. The guard hesitated, glancing at Ismaila. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of an impending storm. In the distance, the Lagos thunder rumbled, a low growl echoing my own internal rage. Kolawole, my son, Mama finally spoke, her voice thin but clear. She walked toward me, the guard surprisingly letting her pass. She ignored the cameras, the threats, and the greed. She reached out and touched my cheek with a hand that smelled of ginger and old memories. Look at what this money has done to you both. Two brothers, born of the same spirit, standing in the dirt of Surulere trying to kill one another. Is this the destiny I prayed for when you were babies? I felt my throat tighten. The iron was melting. Mama, he took everything. He's trying to ruin me. He took paper, Kolawole, she said, her eyes drifting to Amara. But you were losing your soul long before he arrived. You were overworked by your own ego. This young woman, she showed up at your hotel room not just with files but with a mirror. Did you like what you saw? I looked at Amara. She was watching me, her expression soft but unyielding. She was my second chance, the miracle I hadn't asked for. Ismaila scoffed, though his bravado was flickering. Enough of this sentimental rubbish. Adelik is gone but the accounts are still mine. I have the codes to the primary holding fund. By tonight, the Balogun name will belong to me, and you'll be back in the gutters where you belong. Amara smiled then. It wasn't a smile of kindness, it was the smile of a grandmaster who had just called checkmate. You're wrong, Ismaila, she said, her fingers dancing over the laptop keyboard even as she spoke. You think you have the codes? You have the codes to a ghost fund. While you were busy playing mysterious stranger and kidnapping elderly women, I was rerouting the entire liquidity of the empire into a secure escrow account. Ismaila's face went pale. What? That's impossible. Adelik said. Adelik was a snake who would sell his own mother for a kobo, Amara countered. I found the back doors he built months ago. I didn't tell Kolawole because I didn't trust him either, not then. I kept them as my own insurance. But today, I used them to protect the people who actually work for this company. The money is safe. And more importantly, the evidence of your racketeering and kidnapping is being uploaded to the federal police server as we speak. This live stream isn't just a show, Ismaila. It's a deposition. The millionaire villain crumbled. Ismaila lunged for the laptop but I was faster. I tackled him into the dust of the courtyard, the two of us rolling like we were children again, fighting over a toy in the dirt. But this wasn't a toy. This was our lives. The guards moved to intervene, but suddenly the blue gate of the bungalow was kicked open. It wasn't more thugs. It was the neighborhood. In Surulere, people look out for one another. They had seen the black cars, heard the shouting, and watched the live stream on their phones. Men in undershirts, women with babies on their hips, and young boys with fire in their eyes swarmed into the courtyard. Leave them alone, a heavy-set man shouted, wielding a tire iron. We know who you are. We are watching you live. The power of unity was a sight to behold. The guards, realizing they were outnumbered and being filmed by 50 different smartphones, backed away. Ismaila lay in the dust, gasping, his expensive agbada torn and stained. I stood up, breathing hard, and offered my hand to my brother. Not to pull him up into the boardroom, but to pull him out of the hate. It's over, Ismaila, I said. The empire as we knew it is dead. And maybe it needs to stay dead. He looked at my hand, then at the sea of faces watching him. He saw the forgiveness in our mother's eyes and the healing starting to take root in the chaos. He didn't take my hand. He put his head in his hands and wept, the sound of a man who had been abandoned by his own bitterness. The police sirens began to wail in the distance, weaving through the Surulere traffic. Amara, I said, turning to her. She was holding Toby now, the little boy looking out at the crowd with wide, wondering eyes. You saved us all. You didn't just save the money. You saved my family. I told you, Kola, she said, her voice weary but triumphant. I'm a mother. We don't let things fall apart. I walked over to her, ignoring the cameras and the crowd. I reached out and touched Toby's head, then looked Amara in the eyes. I want to make this right. Not with a bonus. Not with a house. I want to start a new beginning. A real one. The police are here, Kolawole, she whispered. There's going to be a lot of fallout. Legal battles, scandals, the board. You might lose the mansion after all. Let them take the bricks and mortar, I said, feeling a strange, light freedom. As long as I have the people in this courtyard, I'm the richest man in Lagos. But as the police officers entered the gate, led by a stern-faced inspector, Ismaila looked up, a final desperate glint in his eyes. You think you've won? He hissed, loud enough only for me to hear. You think Amara is your miracle? Ask her where she was 5 years ago, Kolawole. Ask her why she really took the job at your firm. Ask her about the betrayed partner she hasn't mentioned. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I looked at Amara, but she had turned away to speak to the inspector, her face unreadable. What are you talking about? I demanded, grabbing Ismaila's shoulder. She didn't find those back doors by accident, Ismaila whispered, a bloodied smirk returning to his lips. She's been planning your destiny longer than I have. You think you overworked her? She wanted you tired. She wanted you distracted. She's the daughter of the man you ruined to build your first skyscraper. I looked at Amara's back, the woman I was beginning to love, the woman who had just saved my life. Was our trust restored, or had I just walked into a much more beautiful trap? Is it true, Amara? The words felt like lead in my mouth. Around us, the Surulere evening was exploding into a chaotic symphony of justice. Handcuffs clicked shut around Ismaila's wrists. Police officers were shouting orders, and my mother was being led to a chair by a kind neighbor. But my entire universe had shrunk down to the space between me and the woman who held my fortune, and my heart, in her hands. Amara didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She handed Toby to my mother and walked toward me until we were inches apart. The air between us was thick with the scent of rain-drenched earth and the metallic tang of fear. My father was David Nwachukwu, she said, her voice a steady, heartbreaking whisper. He owned Nwachukwu Logistics. 10 years ago you didn't just buy his company, Kolawole. You dismantled it. You called it, stripping the assets. He called it his life's work. He died 2 years later, a broken man who felt he had abandoned his family because he couldn't provide for us anymore. The memory hit me like a physical blow. I remembered the Nwachukwu acquisition. It was one of my first big wins in the boardroom. I had been so proud of my cold-hearted efficiency. I had looked at the spreadsheets, not the people. I had seen a struggling business, not a father's dream. So Ismaila was right, I said, my voice trembling. Every late night, every report, every miracle you performed for me, it was all a long game. You were the mysterious stranger in my office, waiting for the moment to watch the empire burn. I took the job to destroy you, Kolawole, she admitted, and the honesty hurt more than a lie. I spent 3 years becoming indispensable so that when I finally pulled the rug, you would fall the hardest. I was the one who pointed Adelik toward the offshore accounts, knowing his greed would eventually trigger your downfall. I backed away, feeling a sense of being betrayed that surpassed anything Ismaila had done. And the hotel room? The drawing? The tears? Was any of it real, or was it just part of the script? Amara reached out, her fingers grazing my arm. I wanted to pull away, but I was paralyzed by the look in her eyes. There was no hate there. Only a profound, weary healing. The revenge was the plan, she said. But then I started working for you. I saw the man behind the millionaire mask. I saw how you worked until your eyes bled because you were terrified of being poor again. I saw how you looked at your mother's photos when you thought no one was watching. And then I saw how you treated me. I overworked you. I shouted. I treated you like a slave. You did, she agreed softly. But you also trusted me. You leaned on me. And in these last 48 hours, I saw you choose your mother over your money. I saw you choose my son's safety over your own life. My father was a good man, Kolawole, but he always said that true character isn't found in a mansion, it's found in the dirt. I saw your character in the dirt of Ebute Metta today. She pulled the silver thumb drive from her pocket and pressed it into my palm. I could have walked away with everything today, she said. I could have let Ismaila ruin you and kept the escrow money for myself. That would have been destiny. That would have been justice for my father. But then I realized, that wouldn't make me a hero. It would just make me another version of the man you used to be. I looked down at the drive. It felt heavy, filled with the weight of 10,000 jobs and a billion-naira fortune. Why give it back now? I asked. Because I want a new beginning, Kola. Not just for you but for me. I don't want to be the woman who stayed bitter. I want to be the woman who showed a cold-hearted lion how to be soft-hearted, again. The money is all there. I've already authorized the release to the payroll accounts. Your employees will be paid by midnight. I looked over at my mother, who was watching us with a knowing smile. She had always told me that love wins if you give it enough room to breathe. I looked at Toby, who was playing with a toy car in the dust, oblivious to the fact that his mother had just saved a kingdom. The inspector walked over, tipping his cap. Mr. Balogun, we have Ismaila in custody. We've also received word from the Border Patrol. Chief Adelik was intercepted trying to cross into Benin Republic. We have the recovered assets. The case is solid. Thank you, Inspector, I said, but my eyes never left Amara. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of unity and restoration. I didn't return to the boardroom with the same fire. The Iron Lion had retired. I called a press conference in front of the Balogun Towers, but I didn't arrive in a limousine. I walked through the front doors like everyone else. I announced a massive restructuring. The Balogun Empire would no longer be a dictatorship. We created a profit-sharing model for every employee, from the janitors to the executives. I established the David Nwachukwu Foundation for Small Businesses, dedicated to protecting family-owned companies from predatory acquisitions. And Ismaila? I didn't press charges for the theft. I couldn't. He was my brother, abandoned by our father's shadow. I paid for his legal defense on the condition that he enter a rehabilitation program and, eventually, work for the foundation. Forgiveness was a harder work than finance, but it paid better dividends. 1 month later, I stood on the balcony of my mansion in Lekki. The sun was setting, painting the Lagos lagoon in shades of violet and gold. The sound of laughter drifted from the garden below. I walked down the marble stairs, past the portraits of my ancestors and out onto the grass. There was no private jet waiting, no security detail buzzing in my ear. Just a long table set for dinner. My mother sat at the head, looking radiant in a lace buba and geli. Beside her sat Amara, wearing a simple but elegant dress that made her look like the queen she had always been. Toby was running around the hibiscus bushes, chasing a golden retriever puppy I had bought him the week before. I sat down next to Amara. I reached under the table and found her hand. Our fingers intertwined, a trust restored, that felt stronger than any contract I had ever signed. "You're late for dinner, Mr. Balogun," she teased, though her eyes were warm. "I was finishing a report," I said, smiling. "A report on the most important acquisition of my life." "Oh? And which company is that?" I leaned in and whispered in her ear. "It's not a company. It's a family. And I'm hoping the CEO will agree to a lifetime merger." Amara laughed, a sound of pure healing and joy. "I think she might. But she has one condition." "Anything," I promised. "No more midnight hotel room visits for work," she said, her expression turning serious but sweet. "From now on, the only reason you show up at a door at 2 a.m. is if you've forgotten your keys to our home." "Deal?" I said. As we ate, the stars began to peek through the Lagos haze. We weren't just a millionaire and a single mom anymore. We were a testament to the fact that even in the harshest city, love wins. We had survived the betrayal, the overworking, and the greed to find a happy ending that wasn't bought but earned. I looked at my mother, who raised her glass of palm wine in a silent toast. I looked at Toby, who was now curled up in Amara's lap, fast asleep. And I looked at Amara, the woman who had turned my world upside down only to set it right side up. My fortune was no longer in the bank. It was right here around this table. It was the miracle of a second chance. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Does Ismaila truly change his ways, or is there more drama waiting for the Balogun family? Comment below.